Parker, do you wish to make an opening statement?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go straight into some questions I have, and then I'll hand over to the Coalition. Just some questions regarding University of Melbourne and the Fair Work Ombudsman action. I want you to settle. So just referencing to the Fair Work Ombudsman's action against Melbourne University for serious contraventions of the Fair Work Act. And I note that the Fair Work Ombudsman alleges, and I quote, Fair Work Ombudsman alleges that the university expressly, tactically or impliedly authorised the contraventions because of a corporate culture involving the use of marking benchmarks. The number of specific senior leaders in the faculty knew of the benchmarking practices, and they resulted in employees not being paid for all time spent marking. Can you elaborate at all on the role of the corporate culture and senior leadership in this case?
Yes, certainly. So, noting that we have put it in front of the court, so we're careful about talking about allegations rather than proven, but what we've observed across the university sector in general seems to be a culture of certain behaviour, and in this case we're alleging that there were issues around the way casual academics were paid, and we're alleging that records were not being kept correctly, we're alleging that staff were working more hours than they were being paid for, and that was tacitly approved or encouraged by the university, and hence we're taking this, we consider that to be a serious contravention, and hence we're seeking higher penalties than we would normally.
Rachel Volsky, Chief Counsel, and just to add to that as well, across the university sector there did seem to be a culture of divesting responsibility for payments, recording of hours, etc., without that, I guess, central regulation and oversight about payment methods as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. At Estimates, there are serious governance problems across the university sector. Certainly, we've been really surprised about the extent of it. It appears to be systemic. That they have there's issues across most universities, and that we are really encouraging them to address the issue, do payroll audits, sort out this, make sure they are not breaching their enterprise agreements would be issue number one, and that's where we consider that to be a really serious issue. A breach of an enterprise agreement that you've negotiated and entered into and had approval for, and then breached, to me is very serious indeed. So we're working with the universities. I'd say it hasn't been easy. There's been passive resistance, might be the way of describing not all of them, but certainly there's that culture of wanting us to leave them alone and for them to work out their own issues. And so we feel, certainly I feel, that the only way to get deterrence and attention to this matter across the universities is to take some of them to court.
The extensive underpayments in the university sector has invariably involved casual staff. In the Fair Work Ombudsman's view, is there a connection between underpayments and casual employment?
I think it's absolutely fair to say that casual workers are, by their very nature, they're insecure or in more precarious employment. It stands to reason that they're not in a position of power. So that casuals across the board, not just in the university sector, are going to be more vulnerable. They tend to be, not necessarily in the university case, but they do tend to be younger workers. They're often migrant workers doing casual jobs. the priority sectors that we set cover mostly sectors where there's a lot of casual workers. So you think that's fair to say that it's certainly an issue. It's not the only factor that makes a worker vulnerable, obviously, but it's one of them. Others are, as I said, migrant workers, young workers, non-English speaking background. Those kind of areas always create difficulties for workers, and they're reluctant to come forward. They're reluctant to raise issues because, of course, they can be let go very easily.
Ms. Parker, just on that point, and traditionally, and I'm talking more sort of the media understanding of casual employment and migrant workers and the pressure on young workers. What's particularly striking in this instance is a highly educated, what we considered highly experienced, knowledgeable individuals that, because of the nature of their work, are both tend to be certainly not in their younger years, not juniors. They're further into maturity, in both an employment sense and a personal sense. And they've had experience in most circumstances, and my observation of across various work roles. So they're highly educated, highly experienced, mature individuals, but the thing they have in common with those migrant workers is that and those young workers is their casual and precarious work, which is a defining factor of such what I might describe. I'm not putting words into your mouth, but what I would describe, and may comment on it whatever way you see fit. But they're also hold that casual experience that means that they're in precarious work. They're also as vulnerable because of the nature of casual work and the threat of and potential threats in some circumstances, and certainly evidence I've received in previous inquiries of potential demotion, non-promotion, non-re-engagement, even though in some circumstances they'd been there for many, many years carrying out employment in similar roles, in particular in the same university. Is there any sort of observations that sort of strikes you about this particular instance in the nature of those workers?
I think everything. I think I agree with everything you've said. I mean, what is interesting, in other sectors too, it's probably worth mentioning. When I think I've said before in these hearings that when I came into this role, I think 4.5 years ago, there was a general view the corporate sector was able to look after itself, had payroll people, highly sophisticated. The idea that they'd be systematically underpaying workers was something that we weren't really cognisant of. And then over the first sort of year of my appointment, the issue of wage theft started to be raised in a range of forums, and out of the woodwork seemed to come all these underpayments coming out of corporate sector employers and universities as well. And I think I think it surprised a lot of people. I'd say there's some fairly sophisticated operators in some of those companies too. Not necessarily casuals. I think that they're not employing maybe as many casuals, but it is an area that it still needs a lot of attention, and there's certainly no shortage of work for my agency.
I think for that, how widespread is the use of marking benchmarks that result in underpayments at Melbourne University?
We're seeing it commonly across the universities, and I'm not saying by any means that this is deliberate. I think in some cases conversations we've had with some of the universities have been that it seems a logical thing to set a price for an essay, for example, rather than manage how long people are spending marking. I'll give you an example. So rather than using it as a performance management opportunity, it's much easier to say I'll pay you this much to mark a level 1 essay, for example. There's some logic in it, I guess, But the fact of the matter is that if they want to do that, they need to go to the Fair Work Commission and get agreement that that's how they'll pay people. And that requires them to negotiate with unions to say that's the best way to do this in this sector. And they haven't done that. They've done agreements that say you'll pay on the basis of hours worked, and it's not how they've been paying. But I'm not saying it's deliberate. It seems to be some people have thought that's a logical thing to do, and they've done it. And there's, as Ms Volsky said, they haven't centralised, they haven't had assurance. Their councils and boards haven't been asking questions about it. They haven't sought assurance that things are being done properly. I doubt whether many of their councils have been saying, how are we going with our enterprise agreement? Are we complying with it? So I'm hoping that we're really bringing that to their attention, and I expect that nearly all of them are asking those questions now, and where they're finding issues are trying to address it. But it's very slow and it's pretty frustrating, and it's taking up a lot of our time.
What action will the Fair Work Ombudsman be taking in the coming year as part of the university sector being one of its top priorities? What's the approach to the university sector as being one of the top priorities into the immediate future?
You're asking if it is a priority?
What actions would the Fair Work Ombudsman planning on taking in that?
So we have we've been working within the agency to take a strategic approach to this issue. So as you will have seen, that includes encouraging. So I've been working with the peak bodies within the university sector and talking to them about the need to come forward to audit their payroll, talk to their staff, talk to unions, etc. And then if they find issues, come and talk to us. And I have set out our compliance and enforcement policy, which takes a proportionate approach. So in other words, if you come to us and you are completely open, you talk to us and you tell us how you're going to fix it and work it all out, then you are more likely to end up with a lower level. You may end up with a letter of caution. You may end up with no underpayments. You may find none. In our policy, we then talk about if people have extensive issues that go back many years, if they're not willing necessarily to cooperate, then we can use higher level enforcement outcomes, and that's what we have been doing. So a couple of the universities have offered us enforceable undertakings, cooperated well. There's not a lot of public value in us taking them to court because they're doing the right thing. We get to get audit reports from them for the next 3 years. They have to fix their payroll, show us they've done so. They have to apologise to their staff. They have to get their payroll systems fixed and addressed into the future. So there's a lot of different ways we approach it, but I've set that out quite clearly to them, into the peak bodies, and have had a positive response. As I said, it's still frustrating because it's taking longer than it should. Where some universities have had what we consider to be serious issues, where we want to send a strong deterrence message to the sector, and not just the universities, we will take them to court, and we have done so. And hence Melbourne University is in court on 2 different matters.
So there is some degree of competition, obviously, between the universities and some courses in prestige. It would seem that if universities are able to cut corners and offer, potentially offer a more competitive rate on courses, that could be a deciding factor for people entering into a course at a particular university. So, this sort of what certainly appears to be wage theft, that that could also give an advantage from one university to another, couldn't it?
I think one of the things that's happening at the moment that you may be aware of is the Australian Universities Accord that's looking at the university sector as a whole. We've spoken with the representatives on the Accord, and we have discussed this issue as one of the things we believe should be in that Accord. There should be a requirement that they are obviously paying their staff properly, and that there is there's no breaching of enterprise agreements, and that they are, setting an example, if you like. As you've said, they're, higher level organisations should be highly educated, etc. The Accord representatives were, very positive about that. We're very concerned about the issue. So there's ways of bringing this to attention. We've also been working with TEXA, who qualify the universities. We've been using other methods. I've met with the Department of Education to talk through the issues. We have been trying to raise this across a whole range of areas to bring attention to it and to just address it and move on. And we're confident that universities are trying to address the issues. It's just taking a long time.
I'm very mindful that casual labour in most industries, including in the university sector, they're usually low unionisation. And I'm very mindful in this sector, as in others, that when that occurs, there's more opportunity for exploitation or more disadvantage on trying to get matters dealt with. I just want to sort of say for the Fair Work Ombudsman, consistently pursuing this matter has been a positive thing, but it also says quite personally how outraged I am to find, this university, because I've been coming here now for 3.5 years as a senator. We've been going to these hearings, and you've been giving, regular answers to the questions that various senators have asked about the performance of Fair Work Ombudsman and the university sector. So there has been a informative, engaged approach by the Fair Work Ombudsman, which I congratulate you for. But to find this reckless approach from this and I know aware of other universities to their staff is something that's still an imbalance in the whole system. The prosecution helps, but the imbalance still stays. But again, thank you for your hard work and for the rest of your team.
Thank you.
Over to the Coalition.
And I will also echo Senator Sheldon's comments. Thank you for your hard work and everything that you do.
Thank you.